Welcome to the Savage Worlds GM podcast. I'm your host, Jared Savage Daddy Gunning. Tonight's episode brought to you by Roll20.net, the world's largest virtual tabletop. Check them out today on Roll20.net. You can follow us on Facebook, SWGM Podcast on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at SWGM Podcast. YouTube channel at WGM Podcast. And subscribe on iTunes at you guessed it, Savage Worlds GM Podcast. Rebranding is a wonderful thing. If you have questions for the show, you can email them to savagedaddy@gmail.com. Tonight's topic, cheating. And here to discuss it with us, Dave, the rules maven Scott.
Yes, you can cheat with just the core rules.
Dustin, the savage intern.
Coming to you live from Madison Square Garden.
And some call him Jib.
Hey, Keaty McKeeter Pants.
So tonight's topic, cheating. Is it possible for the GM to cheat? Should the GM cheat? This comes in a variety of different forms and flavors throughout the ages, from good old-fashioned GM fiat, I decide what are the rules matter or don't matter, to dice fudging, changing the outcome of dice because you don't like what the dice say, rolling behind the screen, the quantum ogre. And all of this comes under the dread philosophy and introduction of the concept of player agency. So let's start with a conversation about what is this odd concept and thing called player agency. Jib, I think you're in a position to describe player agency.
Okay.
I love that we start immediately with baseball.
Player agency means that your actions matter. It's going to come back. It means that I am not going to dictate what you do. That's what player agency means. It doesn't mean you get your way. It does mean you can try. My short answer for what player agency is. Okay, and we've lost
all audio from Savage Daddy. Who's decided to make faces instead?
Hold on, I think I'm fluent in this language. No. Ow! Oh, the joys of technology. It's glorious, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Hello. Nope.
Well, it's working, but I believe through your webcam.
Through my webcam. Yeah, for some reason. Hold on a second.
Yeah, a high-priced microphone.
How about now?
There you go.
I'm good.
Okay.
No,
It also means that the player has control of their decision, right? They are equipped to make the decision about what actions their character is going to take, what they're going to say, do.
Right, and those decisions matter.
And that they're aware of the consequences going into it when they make that decision.
Our audience just wants to point out that you have technical difficulties when you advocate player agency.
It's a fair cop. So a character who decides... So let's talk about this kind of agency-wise. It's part of the GM's role to sort of... We've discussed this before as well, is to kind of almost a parenting role to a degree when you're a game master. And if that's the situation, if you got a newbie player who doesn't know what a red dragon is in a D&D game, and they're level 1, and they decide, well, I'm going to take my sword and charge the dragon. The GM should go, okay, listen, you can absolutely do that. Let me tell you why that's a bad idea. Because here's what could possibly happen. Here's what may possibly happen. As long as you're prepared to deal with that consequence, go ahead, attack the red dragon.
And I think that it's completely okay to angle that in a manner so you're talking about what the player character thinks the consequence of their action could be. Like when a player declares that their character is going to dive out of the second story window, it's completely okay as a GM to look at them and go, you realize your character is diving out of a window with no protection and is looking at a 2-story fall. And when the player says, yes, my character's aware of that and takes the action, you just roll with it and you let them have the agency to make that decision, despite the fact that it's going to have what could be a fairly negative consequence of breaking their neck from a fall.
All right, well, let's talk about that one then real quick, Dave. So you tell the player, hey, when you do this, I'm going to require, you're going to take falling damage. And it's going to be 1d6 plus 1 for every story. And dice explode in Savage Worlds. And the player goes, let's go with it. And then you roll 66. Now,
and they take 66 points of damage.
Oh, wait, you mean you don't re-roll it or go, no, it's only actually 12?
In all reality, I'm just going to point out that if I rolled 66 points of damage, I'm not done rolling because it's D6s. And that means I've got to keep rolling because that number is divisible by 6. Something aced, and you're going to continue to take more damage.
Statistically speaking, something aced. But here's my spin on that. I would not address my comments to the player. I would address my comments to the character. It's an awfully long way down.
I feel like that's sort of like the survival instinct, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's an aspect here that comes into style.
Yeah.
There's an aspect that comes into how much of your game is played in the in-character versus the out-of-character meta information. A lot of that is up to the GM and the players. But there's absolutely that thing where the player says, I'm going to run over and jump the Grand Canyon, as Jim is wont to point out. And when he fails his jumping roll, you don't tell him that he sails off into the wild blue and plummets to his death. You tell him your character is absolutely convinced he cannot make it to the other side with his skill. That's what his role has informed to him.
Right. You're give me a jump roll. Oh, cool. You got a success. That's awesome. You know to be fact that it is entirely too far, and there is no possible way that you can jump on your own 2 little foot pads over the Grand Canyon. And if the player goes, I'm going to jump over the Grand Canyon, I'm like, all right, hit me with another jump roll at minus about 1,000.
I don't even know that I'm going to put it at minus 1,000. I'm going to say, give me another jump roll. You successfully jump off the side of the Grand Canyon, and the jump roll says you jump a number of inches based on the successes that you roll. That's how far you made it. It's not enough.
Now let's see. The Grand Canyon's how many stories down?
Yeah, it's a mile.
It's a mile.
A mile.
Yeah, you're gonna take all the damage ever. You're gonna take all the damage ever. We're just gonna go ahead and call
I don't have 1,000
I'll tell you what,
D6.
I will be really, really nice to you, and you only take 1 point of damage, 1 plus 1 points of damage for every 10 feet you fall. 530 feet, give or take a little bit. We'll round it off. That's 1,600 points of damage.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't need to roll that. You're dead.
No. Of course, obviously, we're taking this to an extreme. We're talking about the absolute, you can't achieve it type of a moment. But I think it's important to talk about this couched in those terms. It doesn't matter what the player decides their character does. It is your job as the GM simply to facilitate what the world reacts when they do that thing. It doesn't matter if they're jumping off the Grand Canyon, diving in front of the Red Dragon, jumping out of a second-story window, or they just decide, I'm going to open my door, going down the road at 60 miles an hour and step out. Well, we're going to have some rules. We're going to have some dice, and bad shit's going to happen.
Bad things are going to happen, but before we ever get to the what the hell?
Well,
I have no idea why my phone spontaneously started playing
this
music.
just got DMCA claimed.
I don't know. We can claim it's the remix.
Sorry, I have no idea why my phone spontaneously started playing music. I don't know. Before we even get to the point of, oh, you're now bouncing along the concrete at 60 miles an hour, before we even get there, I'm going to need a strength roll to try to open the door against the wind pressure from the fact that you're going 60 miles an hour.
Oh, I'm not even going to require that. You can open a door at 60 miles an hour. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, unless you've got like the young hindrance or something.
Yeah, give me your
elderly
roll to step out. Give me your agility roll to step out at a negative, I don't know, 8.
See, and here's the thing. You guys are taking this a little too far. It is not that hard to open the door and get 1 foot to the pavement.
I hate to say this, guys.
Stand up out of the vehicle, completely different story.
I know people who have actually done this and lived.
I've got a good friend who did this as a kid. That's exactly what happened. His mom's going down the highway at 60 miles an hour, and he decided to see what happens. So he opens the back door and steps out of the car. And he's got the scars to this day
all right, so it's been brought up on the show. Let's go to the rule book. How do we adjudicate this as a GM?
Same thing as falling damage.
Is it?
I believe so.
Is it falling off a mount?
Yes.
I would say I would have to look at the falling off a mount rules. I believe falling off of a mount, you only take actual falling damage for the distance fallen from top of the mount to the ground. I don't think you take any additional damage for speed. Personally, I would probably, if I was doing this, look at more like the soft collision rules. Simply because you're not going to take full collision rules unless, well, there's a tree.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'd say, make an agility roll to keep from breaking your neck because it's the whiplash that's going to get you.
And again, this is where we come back to that's the realm of GM fiat. It's not the realm of GM fiat to say, oh, no, I rolled 106 points of damage. You take 10. That's not GM fiat.
Right.
GM fiat is going, oh, there's not really a rule in the book that covers this. Let's use soft collision damage. Let's use falling off of a mount damage.
I'm going to be honest. In a pinch, you can always just say, okay, odds are even, roll me a d6.
Yeah, I mean, once we've agreed that we're going to let dice do the speaking, if you've got something you honestly don't know how to decide, it's odds or even, flip a coin, take your pick.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's really a live or die kind of roll. It's like you pick one and you live, you pick the other, you die, because this is something that's crazy.
But the point of this is that once you decide on how you're going to adjudicate this circumstance, and you put dice down on the table, you stand on it. You then do not decide, oh no, that you didn't really take, 1,600 points of damage. You only took 16 because I don't want to kill you. No.
Let's talk about that for a second. And the two major things we hear, always come up for the excuse for this.
Wait, I want to do one of them. I only ever fudge dice to the benefit of the player and in the player's favor, and only to avoid death.
Irrelevant.
Bullshit.
For two things. First off, irrelevant. Second off, bullshit. Third off, how do you know it's for the character's benefit?
I can see the argument that it's the character's benefit. How do you know it's the player's benefit? The player may have stepped their character out in front of the red dragon to act as bait so the rest of the party could get away. When you then have that character not take that damage, or the dragon doesn't attack them, or whatever it is you've decided in your mind as the GM is in the player's best interest, you've taken away that fucking decision to do X that the player actually made at the table.
And what does it mean when you take away the meaning of a character's decision?
going off of that, that decision was already made before session 0 or at session 0. Because I want to ask you, is it heroes never die?
Well, here's the thing. Even if you want to play a heroes never die setting rule, guess what? The GMs can still declare when you die.
Yeah. Heroes never die does not
mean
actually
you
mean
don't die.
It doesn't mean you don't die. But if you're going to fudge dice, if the thing is going to get fudged, it really, it's one of those things to where you're going, how is that in line with the game? I can see if it's a heroes never die setting and you sort of say, okay, well, you're incapped, but you're not dead. Something Deus Ex Machina happened. But if it's not a heroes never die.
See, that's not fudging the dice. This Deus Ex Machina, where, you know, God in the machine comes about and saves you, you know, your character falls into the volcano but happens to land on a boulder and is incapacitated. That's actually the rule. Fudging dice is I rolled damage and then I only apply part of it. Because if I apply all of it, you'll be incapacitated and facing an incapacitation roll.
Gotcha.
Right. Now, it is within the GM's purview to decide what rules to apply. It is not within the GM's purview to decide to discount a die roll.
And I would even go so far as to say it's not the GM's call to determine what rules to apply. It's in what manner to apply the rules you've all already agreed on.
Well,
the GM doesn't have the right during the game to throw a rule out. Otherwise, he may invalidate another choice that's been made. And the great example we've had of that is Shane, you know, chewing Christopher Landauer's ass for why isn't anybody having to take the -2 penalty for drawing a weapon in the same round that they're using it when my character took quick draw specifically to be able to do that. If you can't pick and choose the rules on the fly, you have to pick those, you know, early on.
You are absolutely correct, and I did not mean to imply that you could pick and choose what rules to apply. But when you do get to choose what rules to apply is when you're setting the game up and when you're establishing the contract of play.
Oh, absolutely. And then, again, in the interpretation moments, like you step out of a car moving at 60 miles an hour, what rule do we use this week, folks? That I absolutely agree is GM fiat, and there's no other way to handle that. The GM has to make a split-second decision to keep the game going and stand on it. You have to be willing, once you've made that ruling, to stand on it. Otherwise, you might as well have not made a ruling.
Right.
Right.
Totally agree.
I agree. So, okay, but you know, I'm the GM, and it's my job to make sure that the story gets told. And there's the story that we're doing. I mean, that's the whole point of a role-playing game is to get together and collaboratively tell a story, create a group narrative. And it's my job to herd the narrative.
No,
and make sure
it's
it goes
not.
in the right direction. What?
It is your job to create the situation and the circumstance in which the story arises. It is not your job to decide what the story is.
But I've got this plot hook where when because the Goblin King appears in session 7.
You have only as much control of the story as every other person at the table has over the story. You get to introduce interesting things, and the players get to decide whether or not to interact with them. And if they interact with them, you get to decide how the NPCs and world react to their actions. That's it. You don't actually have any control of the fucking story.
But right? I have this story wherein the first session of the story, they're going to go meet the king, and the king is going to entreat upon them that he needs their help to, fight in a goblin war. And then the goblins are living in the mountain and in the forest, and they're raiding people because they're surviving. So, I mean, I got to get them to the kingdom, and they're riding horses, and I give them a riding roll, and they fall off and break their necks. I've got to fudge that shit. because
Jared,
you'll never get to the kingdom if they fall off their horse and break their neck in the first session.
Jared. It sounds like a lovely story. Go pour yourself a scotch, light a cigarette, sit down at your laptop, and write your fucking novel.
But it's my job to make sure the story goes right, Dave. Right, Jim.
No, it isn't.
For those of you listening who are, loyal listeners of the program, please understand I'm playing devil's advocate because we all tend to agree
I was gonna say
on this entire fucking topic.
Anyone who's watching this, who's watched, I don't know, any other episode of the podcast is going, did Jared have a fucking aneurysm this week?
Jared had a stroke this week. He can't feel the left side of his face.
But
The ratings go up when we argue.
there's that conceit, and that's a lot of times that's the rationalization for fudging dice, right? Oh, well, I called for this. They decided to go on this horse chase, and that I didn't have that plan. They decided to chase these bandits through the forest on horses, and I applied the difficult ground rules, and we're using the chase rules, and they critically failed and fell off their mount and got a critical failure. And so the character's neck should be broken. But if the character's neck is broken, they don't get to the kingdom, and I've got no fucking story. So I'm gonna go. No.
The first
Yeah,
thing
roll a
is,
second character.
the first mistake you made was having them roll a riding roll when they were just riding their horses down the road. Okay.
So wait, you're saying I should only have them make rolls when they matter and they have an actual consequence of possible death?
Consequence of possible failure, yes.
No.
Death being one outcome of failure.
So when I'm driving as myself from my home to, I don't know, Walmart, I don't need to make a driving roll at a D4 to -2 to get from here to Walmart?
Are you racing to Walmart? Are you being shot at?
Are you drifting? Are you drifting the family minivan?
So this kind of like brings up an interesting
I am
story.
in a rush.
Some friends, you know that Savage Worlds has a homebrew, a fan-based Ghostbusters game, and me and some friends, we played in it. I played Egon, and another character played Venkman, and Venkman decided he was going to drive everywhere, but he was just this constant drunk a-hole. And the GM required him to make a driving roll every single time, like 2 or 3 driving rolls just to get, which I guess it's New York traffic. It kind of makes sense. But the guy, he failed every single time. I'm like, this is not the Ghostbusters game. This is the traffic court game.
See,
Wait a minute. I'm going to use an ATM. What do I roll? What does my character roll?
Roll smarts to figure out math.
No, you just fucking do it. You know what an ATM is. I don't need a goddamn roll.
Okay, so because we're on this topic, I'm going to throw Jared fully under the bus.
Uh-oh.
In a distant game, it's been a year and a half or so ago, I ran a Beast and Barbarians one-shot for the usual group that play. And Jared decides to play the dumb as rocks barbarian with uber strength and no smarts. And every time someone tried to talk to his character, he would pick up the dice and roll to see if he heard them. As a GM, I should have shut that shit down. But it was just a one-shot. We were playing for fun. No one was really upset by the fact he was doing it. It was all in the theme of what we were doing that night. So I let it go. That's a case where, you can take those dice rolls to an ultra extreme and everyone's having fun with it. As soon as that became negative to something that was actually going on in the game, where someone at the table's fun was impacted, it's my job as a GM to go, no, Jared, your character fucking heard it. He's within earshot. You can decide what your character's actions are. You can give me a smarts roll to see if the character thinks of the really intelligent plan you as a player came up with, but you don't get to make a roll to see if you heard someone standing right next to you. your character's not deaf.
New hindrance, hard of hearing, and barbarian, strong and stupid. Great character. Because then the player characters could shout at him, duck, and then he could do something inappropriate because he misheard it.
And to be fair, I mean, you have to decide where your game's going to fall. Are you going to play Keystone Cops that night?
Right.
Or is this supposed to have been, the Fast and the Furious, in which case, no, I don't need a fucking dice roll to drive to school.
According to the G Plus community, we're going to play Night Court later.
Yeah, I see that. We're going to do Night Court later, and I don't know that I'm going to ask Harry to make a dice roll to put his fucking robes on.
Well, I mean, there's that conceit, too. I mean, you hear it all the time, too. Like, I'm going to pick a lock. Okay, give me a lock-picking roll. It's almost a reflexive knee-jerk reaction without the GM considering, wait a minute, they're in a dungeon. There's nothing around for hundreds of yards. Nobody's heard anything. Yeah, you pick the lock.
Well, okay. If you want to, again, this comes down to how you use the roll. If, okay, you want to pick a lock. Cool. Let's put some dice down on the table. Oh, you failed. Cool. Well, lock's open. However, comma. At that moment, a guard walks around,
Yeah, what is the risk that's resulting from this dice roll? If the risk is it's going to take an extra 5 minutes and the player tells you, I don't care how long I take, there's no dice roll. If the risk is, no, you started to pick the lock and the trap goes off with a poison needle that has the capacity to kill you, oh, you better believe I'm making you make that dice roll. And I'm going to enforce any penalties for things like low light or lack of tools, because this is a very serious moment for the player character in that failure can result in fairly steep consequences. There's no consequence. If there's no risk, there's no dice roll.
Right. Well, if you're not under any sort of pressure or conflict to do it, you have all the time in the world as well. Yeah, you don't need to roll. You just do it. You just narrate it.
Right. Just make it happen. Go with it.
Right. And even a narration where you fail a writing roll with a critical failure, in Savage Worlds at least, doesn't mean that you break your neck on the fall. It just means you don't get to spend a penny. In Savage Worlds, you can declare that, you fall off the horse breaks its neck. And now you're standing there in the middle of a chase with the guys getting away. You got a level of fatigue for bumps and bruises, and you got no more horse. Now what do you do?
Right.
So, I mean, it's okay. So let's ask this. Let's ask this question. Is it okay as a GM? Is it cheating if I have my ogre pull punches? Or I don't have my ogre. I don't roll regeneration rolls for my ogre because I want him to be easier to defeat. Or, I don't, I don't play my ogre the way the ogre would actually role play in a combat because I don't want to risk a TPK this early.
Oh, okay. See, you were fine right up until you told me why you wanted to do it. If this ogre is pulling punches because the wizard told him not to kill people, but to bring them to him.
Yeah, why is the ogre pulling his punches from an ogre's motivation, not from the GM sitting at the table who has to get to plot point C?
I'm just going to be a little morbid when I say this. It's if you kill it, the meat will go bad.
Well, yeah. I'll put that as a valid reason. But if the reason is I don't want to TPK the party, then no, you're wrong.
Or, oh, wow, this ogre did a lot more damage than I anticipated it to do. This was just supposed to be a random encounter, not a TPK. I'm going to kill a character if I don't have the ogre retreat, or I don't have the ogre change his tactics, or I don't have the blah, 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 blah. Because now I'm deciding, is that cheating, or is that me role-playing the character of the ogre appropriately? I'm in control of the ogre, just like the player's in control of their player. Am
Right.
I metagaming? Am I metagaming and that's bad and cheating? Or am I not cheating? Aha, bitches!
Okay, you're not technically cheating to have the ogre pull his punches. You're not cheating to do that. You are making a decision, possibly for bad reasons, but you're not cheating. If you've put dice on the table and you rolled, 8 wounds, and you go, you take 3 wounds.
That's cheating.
That's cheating.
If you want the ogre to pull his punches, you simply declare the ogre uses the flat of the club and deals non-lethal damage. But he's still dealt. Oh shit, 10 wounds.
Right, but aren't I cheating to a little? Aren't I? I mean, I'm metagaming to a point to do something. I mean, am I violating? Okay, here's a real question. Am I violating player agency for what the original intention of the encounter was? You stumble across an ogre's cave.
Yeah,
you failed your stealth roll and woke the ogre. Okay.
I'm going to back you up right there. There's your problem. If you don't want the players to run into an ogre that's going to hit them at ogre strength, 1, it's not an ogre cave, it's a goblin cave. And 2, there's not a stealth roll to not wake them up. The players just have the choice to bypass the cave entirely. As soon as you have the players put dice on the table and the players make a decision, then yes, not having them face an ogre when you tell them it's an ogre is cheating.
Okay, but they fail the dice roll. The ogre is awoken. The ogre comes out of its cave dragging a spiked club. And my ogre has trademark weapon, fighting, D10, and a club. Ogre bash. That's his tactic. Ogre bash. And when I hit the first player and I do 48 damage as a GM, I go, oh, fuck.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Jared. Okay.
Maybe I should have the ogre drop the club and start punching people instead, because I don't want to kill the party. When I make that choice as the GM, am I cheating? Am I trying to control the story in the way I want it to go?
Why did you put an ogre in their path if you don't want them to fight the ogre?
Yeah, I agree with David here. I can't say that you are cheating because there's not a rule that you're breaking, but you are denying the truth of the emerging story.
Because I'm not role-playing the ogre. I'm
Well,
making
it's
a
like
meta
saying-
decision as the GM not to kill the party.
It's just like the GM sitting down to the table and never spending a single penny. The GM has bennies. The GM's wild cards have bennies. As soon as I choose as a GM not to employ said bennies, I have made the game statistically easier on the players. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The only thing those bennies can impact is the mechanical difficulty of the game for the players. They're only ever going to be able to be spent on things that increase a target number in an opposed roll, allow an NPC to reroll their attacks in damage, or to soak. It is only stuff that impacts the game in a negative manner for the quote-unquote player characters. And choice to not use those is intentionally reducing the risk. Why then would I ever introduce a wildcard NPC if I don't intend for the player characters to actually contend with a wildcard NPC?
Right.
Why use a dragon if all they really have to beat is a puppy?
Right.
Then put a puppy in the scene. Make it as big as a dragon, but don't tell your players this is the challenge they face, and then pull all the stuff out of that challenge because you're afraid their characters might die, because the player's making the choice to tackle that challenge in combat. The player also has the choice to say, "Oh fuck, that's an ogre," and beat feet the other direction,
Right.
or to use a smarts trick, or to talk the ogre down, to use a sleep spell. There's all kinds of ways that the player can go about handling the challenge of the ogre. If they choose to encounter it in combat, it damn well better be an ogre to the full extent of being an ogre, or you are taking away the player's choice to fight an ogre.
Thank you.
So-
And that's what I'm getting at. So
I'm going to agree with Dave with a caveat. Okay, if I have predetermined that the ogre's purpose here is not the characters, but to capture the characters, as long if I have set a parameter like that for this ogre before we start, okay, then I'm fine. Then that's fine. Well, you know, I can go with that. But if the ogre is defending his home against what he considers to be invaders, and oh, by the way, they're snackable too, he's going to kill him. End of story.
right, and here's what I'm proposing is not playing the NPC, not role playing the NPC as the NPC should be role played. I consider that cheating.
So there's a comment that just came up in chat, and I want to directly attack this one. And yes, I do mean attack. John Bott says, it's okay to acknowledge that the ogre was much more difficult than anyone expected and to retcon that. No, it's not.
No.
As soon as a GM, as soon as you make the decision to drop an ogre in the game, it's an ogre. As soon as you decide, instead, I'm going to give the ogre orc stats because he's doing too much damage to your players, you've just taken away the choice the players made to go into combat with an ogre.
Right.
So this actually kind of reminds me of a story.
Wait a minute, Dustin. I'm gonna have to have a conversation with you, Dustin. Sorry.
Too many stories. Okay.
No, Jib is the one who tells stories.
Ah,
That's kind of Jib's thing.
all right.
You can type it in the chat and I'll read it for you, Justin.
All right. Let me. This. I have to warn. I warn you. I have a very loud keyboard.
Okay.
I'm not actually gonna type it.
Go ahead, tell your story.
So we were in a fantasy game, and we had one of those, you know, kill the whole party NPCs come out of a bar. He was like this savage, gigantic murder pirate were-rat. And like the GM described him as he was just beating the snot out of like everybody in the bar for fun. My character was a face character, right? And instead of actually fighting the guy, I challenged him to a drinking contest. And then when he was good and drunk, I started using persuasion on him and convinced him to just take us to the pirate's hideout. Why do you always have to fight the ogre? Can't you get him drunk?
Sure.
I don't know. Can you get the ogre drunk? It depends on my my classification of ogre. And no, I'm not talking ogre from Revenge of the Nerds who just leans out a window and goes, "Nerds!" I'm talking about a classic ogre.
Yeah, but in The Hobbit, Bilbo beats 3 ogres by just having them argue with themselves. I think, like, if the player wants to...
i.e. a smarts trick.
Yeah, if the player wants to physically combat a larger, more dangerous, physically imposing creature,
let
him!
But here's the thing: that's not the topic of conversation about whether or not they want to engage the ogre. The question was, as a GM, if I start pulling punches and not playing the NPC from the motivation and role playing perspective of the NPC, and I'm making a meta decision to pull punches or withdraw or not attack when that's exactly what the fucking ogre would do.
You're right. And
Then
that's what I'm saying.
Then I am
That's
cheating.
what I'm saying. The reason why you don't pull punches, the reason why you let him just do what he would do naturally is because they have other options they didn't take. They saw everything in the box, so they have to take what's in the box.
And to be fair, John points out, John Bott, who brought up the initial, what if it's it doesn't need to be a full powered ogre, you can reduce it because it's not every ogre is as powerful. He's saying this is for the first time GM, first time player who isn't experienced enough to know this. You know what? No, own your mistake and live it. If it kills a character, it kills a character. It takes 15 minutes to write up a new character in this damn system. Roll with the punches. The player learned a lesson, and you as a GM learned a lesson. You learned not to be willy-nilly dropping ogres in front of player characters unless you want them to face ogres.
Done it well, you've probably created a very emotionally charged situation that the characters are now in.
Right. So the next time the surviving characters, as long as new characters, come across an ogre cabinet, assholes pucker. Ooh, oh God, what happened to John?
Beyond that, what about just the emotional roleplay that comes from losing a party member? There's this whole thing about, death should only ever happen when it serves the story, blah-de-blah-de-blah. If that's the way you want to play, there's a rule for that. It's called Heroes Never Die. There actually is a physical rule in the books that allows you to play exactly that way, where the players and the GM kind of get to decide what happens when a character gets incapacitated. But if you're playing according to the rest of the rules, where, no, when you take damage, you face incapacitation. When you face incapacitation, you could die. Having the dice get fudged in that moment negates the roleplay of every other person at the table because you don't want to see that scene. You're afraid you're not a good enough GM to make the death of a character interesting for your players at your table, and you're afraid the table's going to turn against you because it's not fun to die. Instead of relying on the rules and your ability as a GM to make that shit fun and entertaining and give them a chance to really role play some emotional shit for their characters.
But Dave, I don't want to be
you hit on the exact thing right there, David. And the real underlying reason that people typically fudge dice is because they are afraid to kill a player character because they're afraid the player will be pissed off at them. Let me cut this to brass tacks. If you kill a player character, or if a player character dies in the game, because I maintain that as the GM, I didn't kill them. Their choices killed them. But that's okay.
Charging headlong into an ogre cave is what killed them.
No. Okay, hold on a second. Back up a second.
If a player gets pissed off at me about that, we need to have an entirely different conversation.
Hold on.
Nothing to do with their character.
No, listen, they had a bunch of bad effing dice rolls. I mean, we've all been sitting down at a table where, you can't roll a 4 to save your fucking life. And you got, Benny, spent Benny after Benny after Benny, and just this Benny sinkhole where you just roll the exact same fucking thing over and over again, and then your character gets dead. I mean, as a GM, I should cut you a break. I know, I should cut you a break as a GM because the dice fucked you.
I can see that happening, in all honesty. I can see
sure,
that.
But shit happens.
Shit happens. That's why we decided to
hold on a second, Dustin. There's this big sign hovering over my head called Devil's Advocate.
I know. I see the sign.
Let me break that sign down. Bullshit, because you all agreed to abide by the ruling of the fucking dice.
Hey, Jib, can you give us a quick description of how many voices there are at the table, please?
There's the GM's voice. There's the player's voices. There's the dice's voice.
But the dice doesn't decide shit.
Yeah, they do.
You need to go play Amber then.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm sorry. There's no other way to slice this. If you're playing Savage Worlds, the dice have a voice. There's an entire fucking book for all the ways the dice have a fucking voice. And if you're going to throw that shit out, don't play Savage Worlds. There's a lot of games out there that allow you to not use dice.
I could do the same thing too, right? I mean, okay, so we're playing in a campaign. And it's this dramatic opening scene with a battle with, you know, a village of orcs. And the player comes and goes at my main head guy and hits him for like 8 wounds. And I don't have enough beddings to soak it, so I say that it's only 3 wounds. Because that orc shouldn't die right now because it's not dramatically appropriate. It's not good for the story. And the player will be okay with that because they understand I'm trying to safeguard the story. And they won't call dick move or call me a cheater.
I'll call dick move.
What? No, guys, I'm
gonna call you everything but a white boy when you pull that shit.
But
Cheating
guys,
that's your name now.
But guys, I do it in your favor too. I mean, there's plenty of times when you should have died that I fudged the dice, and that's okay. So now, when it makes,
that's your name now.
But I'm trying to help us like create the story, and
and from now on, I'm just going to ignore all of your dice rolls.
So it fits your own desires.
You've set the tone.
Your fear.
You've set the tone. If you're ignoring your dice rolls, so am I. So every time you tell me I take wounds, I just don't.
Well, see, this is
the
why
same thing. I'm just fudging the dice now in my favor.
But this is why I roll behind the screen so that you don't know what I rolled.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm just going to bring.
I knew it was coming.
I'm going to cover this under the same conversation that I had with another GM.
Wait, hold on. Nothing in Savage Worlds rules says I can't roll behind the screen and ignore the dice roll. That's not in the game. There's not a rule in that book that says I can't do that.
I mean, you know, like they don't exactly have an etiquette or honesty chapter, but it's kind of implied.
That's what we need right at the top of the GMing section. Honesty.
How to not be a dick. That's what we need. It's going to be a 700-page book that says just tell them what you roll.
Look, the best argument I can give you for why you roll in the open versus behind the screen is as soon as the die hits the table, the player can start making the decision as to whether or not they're going to spend a penny.
I agree completely. Once again, playing devil's advocate. That's why I roll behind the screen. So I can safely fudge the rules and nobody will know.
You know, this idea that, you know, you're going to roll behind the screen and then interpret that dice roll, that's all well and good, except we have this whole meta mechanic where players can spend these little discs or chits or Beanie Babies or gumdrops or whatever you're using this fucking week as a Benny. You can spend that thing and change the fabric of what just happened. And as soon as you put it behind a screen, you slow down play. And the core thing of Savage Worlds, fast, furious, fun. You're slowing down gameplay.
But I'm also trying to do it for the sake of immersion. No, I'm just pulling Jamie's shade.
Don't even go down
I'm just pulling Jamie's shade in case he's listening.
I will cut you.
Well, this is okay. So riddle me this, Batman. One of the reasons that I'm not a fan of Fantasy Grounds is because it obfuscates that stuff as part of the program. It doesn't let you see what the GM's rolling. It doesn't let you see how many bennies the GM has. It's all kind of behind a wall.
That's not necessarily true.
Is this something you can turn on and off?
There's an option for Dice Tower. I happen to have a bug going on right now that's causing my Dice Tower to never turn off. It doesn't matter what I do. That's why that's why you see shadow versions of my dice in the chat. But yeah. No, Fantasy Grounds absolutely will allow you to roll in the open, but I can certainly understand why that is, you know, yet again one of those things where when you see it, it kind of why is everything hidden? Why do you feel the need to obfuscate that other than I'm going to pull punches? I'm going to, you know, this isn't going to happen the way it should have happened.
So
if you want to roll behind the screen, okay, fine, sure, whatever. It doesn't work for me, but okay. But if you're rolling behind the screen, so you can arbitrarily, throw out dice rolls, there's no other way to cut it. You're cheating.
Why did you roll the dice if you had a specific outcome in mind that is the only acceptable outcome?
Well, I didn't have a specific outcome in mind. I didn't have this horrendous outcome in mind at this point in time.
Then you shouldn't have rolled dice.
No. I'm going to back you up here. I'm going to say you shouldn't play Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds has this whole open-ended exploding dice mechanic. If you don't like that, you don't like a core tenet of the game system. There's no setting rule anywhere that's ever been even posited that takes out exploding dice, because it's so central to the game. It's so central to this idea that you can be killed in a single hit. It's so central to this idea that you can roll an unskilled roll against a minus 50 and get enough raises and successes to actually end up with a success. And we've all seen those. Yeah, we've all seen those monstrous dice rolls that get everybody amped up. As soon as you say, I don't want that to happen in my game, the simple answer is don't play Savage Worlds. Now, and in fact, I would take it a step further and say don't play anything that allows exploding dice.
Like part of the reason why Savage Worlds is for some people and, D20 or F20 or whatever we're calling it nowadays is for others is because if you crunch the numbers in the classic D20 setting, you can say, okay, we have this percentage chance of beating the guy. Versus Savage Worlds, hey, it's like reality. You don't run out there all pale-mail, no matter how good your armor is. You can die.
Well, I'm gonna put this one forth. One of the things that I hear that I know I've been guilty of early on was a misinterpretation of soak rules to the point where I'm fudging and I'm cheating the system. And that being, well, because it's the fourth wound that incapacitates you, I'm not going to count any wounds beyond that you have to soak.
And I think that's honestly one that most of us do without even thinking about it. And it is, technically speaking, that's Cheater McCheater Town just as much as any of the other things we've discussed tonight.
Right, so if I do 12 wounds of damage on your ass, you got to soak at least what? 9. At least 9 of them to stay on your feet, right? You got to soak 9 of them to be stuck with 3 wounds. Oh, shit.
And that's if you didn't have any.
I've only got 2 Betties. Oh, God. All right, well, I was only able to soak 3.
That was past the 4th. Give me a roll.
Oh, can I re-roll this vigor roll not to die? Well, if you had any bennies left, you could.
Yeah, but you decided to burn them all on that, 48 you had to roll.
Now, is it cheating for the GM? I don't think it's cheating for the GM to point that out to a new player or even an experienced player.
Absolutely not.
Hey, you know what? You've got 3 wounds. You just took 8 wounds. You got 2 bennies. The chances of you soaking that are pretty slim to none. You might want to hold a Benny back for an incapacitation roll, not to roll a 1 and die on the incapacitation table.
I have readily and recently held back all the bennies for the incapacitation roll, and it did no fucking good. Character still died.
And so so retconning. It's retconning cheating. Is retconning cheating? Nope. We're gonna hand wave that. We're gonna retcon that whole combat scene because I didn't calculate wounds correctly.
It depends on what you're retconning for. If you're retconning because a player points out, hey, 5 minutes ago before this combat, we all took a boatload of damage because we rolled the collision wrong when we rolled over the ambulance, and everybody started at like 2 wounds going in because we rolled the wrong number of dice. that's a moment where everybody at the table needs to all decide: do we want to roll the game back, roll that correctly? Because, again, exploding dice, I could roll fewer dice and roll more damage. Or do we want to just, because we have to roll back 5-10 minutes worth of gameplay?
Or I could roll more damage than you already took.
Right. What I would be inclined to do in that situation, and maybe this is cheating, but to say, you know what, we executed this thing wrong, so I'm just obliterating that result because we did it wrong.
All right, then where do you
rather than redoing it?
Then where do we make a ruling that's fair as a GM when we retcon that isn't cheating? I mean, are we doing it to the? Are we retconning? Okay, so here's the question: do we retcon in the favor of the NPCs when we didn't do it correctly?
The players, before any retcon happens, I think everyone at the table needs to agree to it. It's not my purview as the GM to simply back the game up. It is the whole party's decision whether or not we're going to back that game up. Because, just because I agree and player A agrees, players B, C, and D might really, care about something that's happened since that moment that they don't want to have retconned. By the same token, what's the motivation behind this? If the motivation is, let's retcon that because I didn't mean to kill Jim's character. No, that's cheating.
No, I would stop that right there. No. Jim's character's dead. Jim's already making a new character. Carry on.
Well, and this is why we have rules for the role-playing game, right? Because it's like so much childhood role-playing of Cowboys Indians. I shot you. No, I shot you. No, you didn't. That's why we have dice to say you got shot, motherfucker. And here's what happens.
That's why when the older kids play that, they're using paint pellets. And when I say I shot you, I walk over and point to the giant splotch on your vest.
Right.
So, I mean, it kind of harkens back to that. So, the Quantum Ogre. Let's discuss Quantum Ogreism.
So I think the key to the Quantum Ogre first is to define what it is. And that's this idea that in the simplest terms, the players come to a T-junction. Down the right-hand hallway is a room with an ogre in it. The players decide to turn left. And as a GM, you want them to face the ogre, so you pick that room up and move it to the other end of the hallway so that the players are guaranteed to run into the ogre. Now, if you designed the dungeon from the beginning with an ogre in both directions, that is not a Quantum Ogre. For it to be the Quantum Ogre, it literally has to go from where it is to where they have decided to go as a GM fiat maneuver behind the scenes. You have to rearrange the world to have a Quantum Ogre. And I think we all agree that this is born out of the age of the old wargaming stuff that used to happen at the tabletop, where it took hours to roll up stats for some shit, and you laid out this carefully planned dungeon in advance, and oh shit, the players have decided to dig a hole in the wall and go down here, and I have nothing ready.
Right. It smacks of railroading, too, as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a complete and utter violation of player agency. Because if there is no difference between choice A and choice B, there is no choice.
Exactly. It's the illusion of choice, and it is literally killing your game.
So, don't do it. There's no devil's advocate for that. I understand why a GM will do it. Out of panic. Oh shit, I didn't plan something. Oh god damn it, I don't know what to do. This is where you kind of need, I'm sorry to say this, and it's going to sound horrible. You need to develop some improv chops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every GM needs some improv chops. There's no problem with having, a very well planned out scenario with alternatives. But at the end of the day, you are not going to be able to counter every choice the player characters can make. You're not going to be able to anticipate what those are going to be. You're going to have to do some shit, fly by the seat of your pants.
Well, and I mean, to take it a step further, Ruben says this, and we all talked about it in the green room before we came live. And Ruben's exact quote, "Beauty of Savage Worlds don't really need Quantum Ogre because of how easy can craft creatures and counters." And that's exactly it. I can literally pull a encounter out of my ass in Savage Worlds. It's that quick and easy. And I don't care if it's your first time GMing it or your 9,000th time GMing it. It is very simple to say everything in the room has a D6 in everything and roll with it and just throw some set dressing on it and call it good.
Right. Now, let's ask this. Maybe this doesn't qualify as quantum ogreism, but maybe it's Schrodinger's ogre. A situation where you, the players, you're trying as a GM to get them to visit this Old West town because that's where your story has been prepared and crafted to take place. And you're not necessarily trying to do it on railroad, but they defeat your opposition way too early and often. So you have a retaliatory response to that. You create something new that didn't exist before, but it's really a metagame horseshoe because you're trying to wrangle them towards one point, and you as a GM are overreacting to they one shot in my big bad.
Okay, so some people are touching on this idea that Quantum Ogre is not cheating, that it's just bad GMing, it's railroading, but it's not cheating. It's absolutely cheating because, again, and this goes back to Jib's definition of player agency at the top of the show, I am taking away the direct consequence of the choice. You make choice A or B, and I decide that A and B are equal, despite the fact you were of the opinion and were informed to have that opinion that A and B were not equal. They were two separate things, and going to A or B was going to have a different result. If I turn both into B because I want you to face B, that's cheating. And the aspect of this that I really, really think people are failing to see is this is narrative cheating. You are denying the players their control of your cooperative story because you are a greedy asshole who needs to tell your story instead of playing our game that creates a story.
Yep.
Well, it's a shell game. The Quantum Ogre is a shell game. I've got 3 walnut shells, and here's a pea. Mix them, round and round and round. The world goes where they go. And while I'm doing that, I've removed the pea. So when I go, hey, put your money down. Tell me where the pea is.
Garrett, I get what you're saying, but I'm going to change it a little bit. Okay? Mix them. Where's the pea? You're right, because I'm going to put the pea there.
Yeah. Every cup now has a P under it because sleight of hand, I'm going to put the P there when I lift it up. That's the Quantum Ogre.
Yeah, it's stacking the deck.
Still a con. It's still a cheat.
Yeah. But it doesn't hurt the players because they were going to encounter it if they turned left. That's not the point. The point is you've invalidated their choice. That's what makes you a cheat.
And the other
you invalidate.
And the other thing people are saying is, but they won't know this if you keep your fat mouth shut and don't tell them you did it. That's true. The player won't know you cheated. You got away with the cheat. They didn't know you stripped them of what they should have gotten by turning left instead of right.
If you cheat on your spouse, if you cheat on your spouse and they never know about it, did you still cheat?
Absolutely, you did.
Absolutely, you did.
Depends on what state you live in. I guess could have something to do with it.
This is an existential nightmare.
Here's the thing too. Guess what? You may think you've gotten away with it. And when you think you get away with it and you try it again and you do it a few more times, guess what? You're gonna get caught with your hand in the proverbial cookie jar. And somebody go, wait a minute. Okay, so I decide not to go to so let's do this one, right? Let's play a Quantum Ogre game. I'm in a dungeon. I can turn left, I can turn right. Well, you don't have anything planned for right. You plan the ogre for left. So I go right. I kill your ogre, then decide to back around and go left. Now what? Now what? Same ogre? Same ogre? What do I do now? What do you do now?
Time travel. You've hit 88 miles an hour. Time travel occurs and you see the ogre again. Well, and I mean the same thing holds true. John Bott in chat had said, well, what happens when the players turn right and then the ogre that was to the left smells the players out and starts stalking them through the dungeon? See, that is not a Quantum Ogre. That is, as a GM, the living world is reacting to their choices, but they're still going to face whatever was down that path to the right while that ogre is stomping down from the left and is going to come up behind them while they're in the midst of whatever challenge you've put down to the right.
And what we're arguing is with Savage Worlds, it's just as easy to go, okay, I didn't have anything planned for them going right. All right. There's an empty treasure hall. It's just an empty room with treasure in it that has gone unadulterated.
It's just an empty room. Here is the absolute part of this that drives me batty. If you didn't plan a right, why is there a hallway?
Right.
Exactly. Well, that's my first thing. I was going to say that a little while ago. You put a left and right turn and you only populate the right-hand side of it, you fucked yourself.
Yeah, you're cheating to cover up the fact that you took the giant vibrating dildo and shoved it up your own ass.
They walk into a room with a book on minimalism.
There you go. And it's only got one page and a single sentence.
Right.
By the way, the dildo is ogre-sized, just because.
Oh my gosh, it's a giant vibrating mace.
So let's talk this scenario, right? And this is something I've heard recently. This is not an original thought. I'm just going to kind of summarize it and paraphrase it. Heard it on a Happy Jacks podcast recently discussion. A viewer writing in. You're heroic. You get put together this heroic party who's going to go investigate. They're charged with investigating a goblin infestation. And when they get there, they slaughter everything green in sight, including small children. Literally described as picking up baby infant ogre goblins and throwing them up in the air and hitting them with the bread side of their axe to smoosh them against the wall and laughing horrendously about it. Going after a mother goblin, shielding her infant child from the attackers to the point where she gets killed. They pick up the baby infant, throw it to fire, and laugh. So, horror aside, if the GM's reaction to that is, oh, well, guess what? Around the corner are all the male warrior goblins, and fuck you, here they come. Am I quantum ogring? Am I reacting as a GM if I didn't have them there in the first place?
So
even if it makes sense for them to be there, but I didn't consciously, as a GM, have them there as part of the story because I wanted the players to engage in conversation and diplomacy and investigation, and they engaged in wholesale genocide.
So here is more what I would do in that situation. Rather than inventing a horde of goblins that magically were right around the corner, waiting for you to slaughter their families before they charge in, you might have the warband has returned, and this would be very akin to, Custer's Last Stand. But more importantly, what I would tend to do is once the players are done with their murder hoboism and have gone on about their way, sooner or later word gets back to the town that they did this. And now they're going to face actual consequences for their actions based on the world those characters live in.
I just think if you really want to punish your players, then they have to do an interlude about sand at this point.
Hold on a second. Is it your job to punish your players?
You should never punish your players. Punish the characters for their actions appropriate to the way the world would react.
Agreed.
Okay, so if there was nobody to witness the crime, and they don't talk about it,
oh, they'll get away with it for a while.
They personally get away with it, right?
Until the first traveler goes through and reports back, "Oh my God, what I found just up the road where the party saved us."
Or the warband comes home and finds them entirely slaughtered with no evidence that it was humans whatsoever because there are no survivors.
Right.
What about human footprints?
I was going to say, unless your
Tracks,
players have,
Booted. Okay, so maybe the players are now being tracked a couple sessions behind.
Sessions later, the town that hired them has been wiped off the face of the earth by the roving goblin horde that is hunting them.
Yep. Sounds like a good...
Or it's the firing shot. It's the first shot of a goblin-human war in that territory that lasts for a century.
Or a grieving goblin widower actually seeks out to hire some adventurers to avenge his tribe's death.
Yep.
Or even if they can't. Okay, so here's what I'm saying is, if you can't bring the consequences of their actions directly at their feet, that doesn't mean that there's no consequence for their action in your world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's part of player agency. You decided as characters to go in and wipe out a defenseless goblin village of women and children.
Right.
You made that choice.
We can bring to bear on that.
Right. So what should logically happen, not what should happen from the GM's emotional investment in what the GM has witnessed his players and characters do, because there can be the knee-jerk reaction of, you motherfuckers. I can't believe you bunch of fucking... I told you. Did I not say investigate?
Right.
I said fucking investigate. What are you doing?
Like, hey, dickheads! The goblins were our allies. They came to us asking for help.
So, but there can be that and here's what I'm saying. There can be this unintentional emotional reaction from a GM to overcompensate against the player action when you shouldn't. And that's also kind of a metagaming, cheating kind of thing. Are players cheating when they metagame? Are GMs cheating when they metagame? And by metagaming, we're talking about the classic definition of you as a player has information the character does not.
It depends on what information we're talking about. You as the player know that you can use a smart trick or the tactician edge, etc., but your character maybe doesn't. That is a little of a gray area where I'm going to say, no, whatever there is available to be used. If you feel uncomfortable with this idea of the metagame idea, make a smart roll to see if your character thinks of it. I recently did that in Jared's zombie game, where my character has seen multiple zombies take lots of wounds and not die, but he's also seen them take a single wound to the head and suddenly they're out of the fight. So I made a smarts roll to figure out, would I aim for the head when attacking a zombie from that point forward? But if the flip side of this information is, as a player, I've played this scenario before, and I know we really have to capture the scout before he gets away. or the next scene is way worse, that's some cheating son of a bitch shit.
What
Agreed.
about so what about the GM who does this? And I've heard this advice given on GM podcasts before. Listen to your players and write down their ideas to deal with the situation or puzzle, as far as that's what the answer is.
Yeah, I don't really.
Am I cheating? Am I cheating as a GM? And I'm metagaming as a GM by eavesdropping on the player characters' conversation about what they're going to do, and then formulating my response based on me as a GM listening to the players about what they're going to do. Am I cheating?
Yeah, you're a cheating son of a bitch. It's great to harvest ideas from your players. It's also great to have the world react to them. But the players decide, hey, we're going to load up this boat full of explosives. And in the middle of the night, when they can't see it, we're going to push it over to their boat and shoot it with a flaming arrow. And then you have the NPC boat have infravision guards. You're a cheating son of a bitch. If they were going to have infravision guards anyway, you're not. But if you add it because it makes the players plan harder, you're a cheating son of a bitch. And I could think of at least one person in this conversation who occasionally falls prey to this line of thinking.
Okay, Dustin, we've had this conversation. You knock that shit off.
Yeah, I'll try.
It's great being the probie, isn't it, Dustin? For all of the things that other people do.
So are you cheating? Are you cheating if you, let's say as a GM, you decide, you know what, I'm not challenging my players, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create mirror images of their characters as NPCs and pit them against mirror images of their character and behave exactly the way they behave. Am I cheating?
When did you decide this? Did you decide this as a plot device? The big bad guy goes out and hires a group of adventurers, matching up with their skills that he spent time and resources and effort to learn? Then no, you're not cheating.
Sure, that's my rationalization. But in all honesty, they keep whooping up on everything I put in front of them. So I figure the only way I can challenge them is by making them face themselves. So I insert that into the world.
I haven't done it to cheat like that, but I've been in a pinch before where I didn't have an opponent. Like they went left instead of going right, and I'm like, well, crap, what's in the other room? So I didn't use the ogre, but I did sort of say, let me see this sheet here for a second. And something very similar was in the other room.
So I'm going to take this a step further. They run into another group of adventurers. Not a big deal. It's bad GMing. It is absolutely a dick move, but it's not cheating. When it becomes cheating is when you tailor build a party that takes advantage of every weakness on their character sheets.
Right.
Now you're cheating.
I think a lot of what happens is that you have to realize that the NPCs and the big bad and even like the helpful NPCs, their actions have to make sense in their personal world. The whole fact that the idea that the heroes are the center of the universe has to get out of the GM's mind, because a regular village is not going to dedicate thousands upon thousands of gold on weapons specifically tailored to kill the party when they can use that to buy farming equipment. They've just got to do what makes sense for them personally.
Right.
See, we covered everything. I think we've pretty much covered everything in the gambit of cheating. So, not your story. So what I mean, so the GM, because we came back to this, we touched on this earlier, right? Not your story, the player character story. What's so funny, Dave?
Conversation happening in chat at the moment.
Oh,
Well, what is it? Is it content gold? Is it good
It's
pod?
huge. It's just
They're
huge.
discussing Richard moves and hashtag not my Richard.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna bring up one real quick. So is it cheating for someone with the beast master power
Fuck you.
to use it on somebody who has the beast bond? It's not what is it? Beast. I'm
It's
confusing
Beast
the
Friend
power.
versus Beast Master.
There we go. Beast master being the power, right? Or is Beast master the edge?
Beast Master's the edge. Beast
I'm
Friend
gonna go
is the power.
first, and I'm just gonna like.
Well, to the uninitiated, let's describe the situation and talk about what each edge and what each power does.
Okay.
So, as an edge, I can have this edge called Beast Master
Mhm.
or Beast Friend,
Beast Master.
Beast Master, that allows me to attract a loyal, faithful animal companion that is essentially my sidekick extra. I control it as the player character.
Allied extra. It's not a sidekick.
Right. It's not like it's an extra. But in narrative terms, it's my faithful sidekick, German Shepherd, or it's my, it's my lone silver away to my Lone Ranger. It's my horse. It's whatever it happens to be. It is not an intelligent animal. It's not a magical animal. It's just an animal that I control its actions. Now now as the GM, I create a character that has Beast Master power who can go whoop and take control.
Beast Friend, but yes.
Beast Friend. Okay. So I can take control of your extra, just like the puppet power, but your extra does not get shit. I make the roll as the power as the GM. Bam, I now have control over your beast extra. Is it okay for a player to do it to another player character?
There
It's
are
Okay.
cheating.
There are a lot of things that get involved here. Okay.
Mhm.
First things first, it's not illegal.
No one is breaking the rules.
No one is breaking a rule in this equation. However, someone may very well be breaking the implicit contract of play. And at the end of the day, here's going to be my answer. Okay, you can do that. But I expect there are going to be ramifications of that. And when they come around, I don't want to hear a word.
And where I come down on this is it really comes down to, do you allow PvP at your table? If you would allow player A to use persuasion against player B, or to draw steel and actually attack player B, to cast a power on player B, then you absolutely can allow player A to cast a power on player B's allied extra. If you would not allow any of those things, because of your social contract, because of just the way you're running your game, then no, you should not allow another player to do this in that manner. That goes back to that whole GM fiat decision of what rules you're playing by at the beginning of the game. And I think in a case like this, where we're talking about player versus player action, that's a table decision, not a GM decision.
I kind of agree. I would also add this, that adding a caveat or additional rule step to that is breaking the rules. So saying, "Oh well, all right, but I'm gonna give the extra a spirit roll to resist that suggestion," just like puppet. No, this power doesn't work that way. The power does not say the target gets a spirit roll to resist. Doing that is breaking the rules. When you do that, you're breaking the rule. You're
Again,
adding something that's not there.
this goes back to what did you all decide at the beginning when you first set the thing up? If you've decided that something like this is going to allow opposed rolls, even if the normal rules don't allow it, then I would say make your opposed roll. But I would also say make a decision up front. Whose stats do you use for the opposed roll? The target of the power or the player who it affects? Because player B, who has this beast, might have a higher spirit or smarts or whatever die type is necessary for this opposed roll, and you need to know whether you're using their stats because it's their character, or you're using the allied extras stats because that's the individual target. Those are all things that I really think are part of the social contract of play, and if you need to, this has never come up before, you've never had this experience at your table, and you didn't have that conversation back when you started the campaign, stop the game and have the, I hate to say this, but everybody drink, adult conversation. Figure out how you're going to do this going forward, because this is not one of those that's a simple GM handwave fiat moment. You're making a decision that's going to impact a lot of shit in your game from that point forward.
Right, and I would say this too, that it's not just up to the GM and the two players who are in conflict. It's a conversation for the entire table. How does this make the person sitting next to them feel? Does it make them feel uncomfortable and edgy? I mean, the two players going at it may not have any problem, and it may be all in good fun. But then the other three players sitting there going, this makes me feel icky and uncomfortable, or it makes me feel dirty. It makes me feel scared for my character, because if they can do this to each other, they can do this to me. I don't like this. But if everybody at the table is okay with it, then when the guy whose dog got taken over decides to slide a blade in your ear at night when you're sleeping and you don't get a notice roll because there's this thing called a finishing fucking move rule in Savage Worlds, you don't get to cry.
Right.
You don't get to call foul and go, hey, wait, no. He can't just murder me in my sleep. I should get a notice roll. No, fuck you. You're unconscious. You're unconscious.
Opened that.
Right. You're unconscious. The rule says incapacitated characters do not get rolls. He just walks up and sticks a blade in your ear. You're dead. Done. We're done with this conversation. Make a new character. And don't bring that metagame baggage into the next game and the next character.
Sometimes you really do have to, if somebody is going to violate another player's, if they're going to violate their character and them, like, that's an attack on a player to another player, in all honesty. That's just petty.
Oh, it's absolutely PvP. This isn't even just an attack on a player. This is saying my advance on my character sheet is worth more than your advance on your character sheet, because mine can take control of yours. I
would honestly, even if it's not part of, I would say that, no, you're going to call a different animal. I don't think you're going to call their bonded animal, because that's
if you do that, you're violating player agency.
Yeah, but we're protecting one player's agency to violate another's.
Nope. Here's the rub on this is, why didn't player A, who's going to cast the power, just turn to player B and say, have your beast do X this round, unless the two players didn't agree to begin with.
Right.
Yeah, we're assuming maybe they didn't agree.
This question, and whether or not your social contract of play allows them to be contentious with each other, or, as I've seen at least one person in chat say, they've got a flat rule, it's just not allowed at their table. No PvP is allowed. Right. All the player characters are expected to work together. Then in that case, those two players need to come to an agreement. And as a GM, I'm going to go get a sandwich while they work this shit out.
Right. And here's the tricky thing about player agency. It's like free speech. If everybody has a right to speak their mind freely and say what they want, and another person cannot get offended or can be offended all they want, it doesn't matter. I don't get to protect your feelings as part of my free speech. It's player agency, like free speech. Everybody has player agency.
Facts don't care about your feelings, Jared.
We have free speech, but we don't have the right to steal from one another.
He has a point there too.
We can literally say anything we want to one another because we're not violating another person with our words. But, like, if you go into somebody's home and take their TV, they're not going to be able to watch Desperate Housewives. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast.
Well, the bottom line here is, if they want to go in the house and steal the TV, the universe is not going to stop them. Okay? But I might.
That's a fair point. The universe wouldn't stop you.
Or if they really want to do the full I'm going to do X, then I'm going to enforce the universe's response that when the animal comes out from under their control, the animal attacks them for aggressively manipulating the animal's will. And then the player has the option to also attack them back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't get you don't get to have it both ways, Skippy.
Right. It's like, you can open that door if you want to. That's okay.
Once Pandora's box is opened, everything's out.
Right. But don't bitch at me when it bites you.
Right. Okay. And what we're also talking about, is it cheating? No, it's not cheating. Is it a dick move? Absolutely. It's a dick move.
Well, I would even go so far as to say it could be cheating based on what you all have agreed.
What you've agreed to, as far as what you've agreed to. So, so for example, as a GM, I can put a wild card sniper with a scope on top of a building with a D12 +2 shooting, and I can go for a headshot and I can murder your fucking ass without any warning.
Yep.
Am I breaking the rules?
Nope.
Fuck no.
Nope.
Is it a dick move? Kinda.
Maybe.
Depends. It really depends on the situation. I can think of a few situations where putting a sniper out to hunt you is not a dick move. But you have to have done something pretty bad in the game.
If you weren't warned, hey, you know what? You're going to do this to a mob boss, and he's going to probably hire a hitman. It's probably going to be, so you got to look out for glinting shit off tops of buildings, because some people will be coming for your ass. And then I do that to you? No, not a dick move. You earned it. Congratulations. There you go.
Honestly, I think chat's kind of nailed this one, apart from their whole peanut butter conversation that they're having. But chat's nailed it in regards to this idea: don't play with assholes.
Well, yeah.
If you've got a player who's willing to go to that level and no one else at the table has agreed to PvP, that's the player that's the problem.
Yeah.
And that needs to be that whole, adult conversation. Yes, fuckers drink.
Right.
All right. Well, I think this horse is sufficiently dead and beaten.
It's blue.
So, until next time, this is Jared Savage Daddy Gunning for Jib,
Yo.
Dustin,
Hello.
and Dave saying keep rolling and stay savage.